two bulls walked out, like a couple of puppy dogs, stripped the table.
So we set up the table and explained to him what it was. Then we sent the real bull out and he crushed
Two
it.
bulls walked out, like a couple of puppy dogs,
Then we got the
stripped the table.
So we set up the table and explained.
And these ones that's on, I can X out, right?
Steers, and we sent the real bull out, but they were completely tame. And we got them just a hair earlier because we're feeding grain on the table. We get them to run around the table and kind of push, but they were completely tame. So then by the time the rodeo came around, they just ran out and ate. Yeah.
Yeah, that one when we put it out first, I trash. Just threw it all over. Both busted the chair.
Ready? Okay. Nice Kelmore City Council meeting to order. It is August 10th. We welcome those who are here in person, those might be on Zoom and YouTube. Thank you for being here with us. Appreciate that. First off, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I asked Ty to lead us in that, and Tony will lead us in the opening ceremony.
All right.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father in heaven, as we convene this Morgan City Council meeting this evening, we wish to take this opportunity which we have to express our thanks and gratitude unto thee for the blessings and many blessings that thou hast blessed us with and bestowed upon us. We're grateful for this beautiful valley in which we live. We're grateful for this great country in which we live and for the freedoms and blessings we enjoy. We're grateful for the opportunity which we have to serve and to help make our community a great place to work and live. Father, we would ask that as we conduct the business of the city this evening, that we might have thy spirit to be with us to guide and direct us. That we might do those things which would be in accordance to thy will. That we might always act in a manner pleasing unto thee, and that we might make those decisions which would benefit our community and be a positive thing for the community which we serve. Father, we're grateful for those who serve our country to protect our freedoms. We're thankful for those who have given their ultimate sacrifice as well. And we ask, Father, that thou might bless and be with those who are actively serving at this time, that thou might protect and watch over them. Grateful, Father, for the moisture we received recently. And Father, we would ask that thou might continue to bless us with moisture, that we might have water enough for our needs, for our crops, and for our other water needs as well, that thou might see fit to bless us with rain and with moisture. Again, Father, we're grateful and thankful unto thee for all that we have. We say these things at this time in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you all for participating. Thanks for Ty and Tony. Consent agenda includes 3 sets of minutes and warrants. I'll entertain a motion as soon as you're ready.
I've got a couple of questions, Mayor. First on just probably a correction, a minor one on the city minutes of July 13th. Turning over to page 3. On the motion at the middle of the page, we need a council member's name there. Unless he was anonymous.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, council member moved to table the petition to Morgan City Council.
Yep.
And then just moving over to the warrants, just a question to Ty. Page 4, the Save a Tree, a $21,000 expense for general tree care. But How do we care for trees?
So I'm turning there, but we do pay a tree company to come and trim around our power lines
Okay.
annually. They spend a week or two, depending on what we're asking them to do and what our high priorities are. But let me just make sure that's coded correctly. So
Page 4,
make sure that's what it is.
top third there.
Mayor, I just have a couple of quick questions too.
So I'll have to look that one up.
Ty, on page 2, the honing equipment for the backhoe, we flat out purchased that, correct?
Yep.
Okay. So that was the cost of it plus the backhoe that we traded in, I assume. right?
Yep. Yeah, so we ordered a new one, got it delivered. It was ordered last spring, but just barely got here.
And then just curious, who was on page 4, who is Stewart Irby Company? Is that just a
On which page?
4?
Oh,
Just down from where we were looking.
yeah. So that's also power supplies.
Oh, okay.
So that Save a Tree is also for power on the tree care. So I think that's our annual tree agreement. They went up and down State Street. Was a big one, but then on other people's yards. So that's what that was.
Any other questions or a motion?
I'd move to approve the 3 sets of minutes, special hybrid meeting minutes of June 10th. Same minute, hybrid meeting minutes of June 22nd and hybrid meeting minutes of July 13th, as well as warrants covering the period from 7/10 to 8/9/2021.
I can second that, Mayor.
Motion by David, second by Jeffrey. We passed the 3 sets of minutes. City Council special meeting, June 10th, City Council hybrid meeting, June 22nd, City Council hybrid meeting, July 13th, and 1 set of warrants covering time from 7/10 to 8/9. Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Okay, motion passed unanimously. Consent agenda has been approved. Denise, we have anybody that wants to communicate with them, public comments? Okay, thank you. Okay, next item is a petition to Morgan City Council for extra territorial water services from John Cannon. Okay, John,
Hello, Ray.
from this meeting last, well, give some time to you first. You talk about maybe checking in some things. I don't know if you checked in any items or not, or if you got something else you'd like to say. I'll let you have the opening word.
So, I was able to circle back a little bit on some of the items we talked about that I wanted to look into. I think first off, is everybody on the council familiar with the project we're talking about? I think everybody's had a chance to look at it, right? Kind of understand the situation.
I've looked at it. I wasn't here, but I've looked at it. you know.
Okay.
So, and I won't take much time tonight, but, so basically, Gary's concern, which is a valid concern, was that, okay, what is the city's position gonna be? Are we just gonna provide water, to anybody that wants to build a house outside the city limits, you know? And his concern was, well, let's, you know, that's something the council has to decide. And I think that's a difficult issue. But, you know, my position is I circled back and I looked at our project and I said, okay, what from a, you know, for me, if this was reciprocal, I'm sitting where you guys were, what's a good idea? What's a good idea for our community? We all live here. We don't want to set bad precedents. We don't want to do things that don't make sense. We don't want to create problems down the road. And so I wanted to kind of look at that, and I was able to meet with Dave Rich, and I was able to meet with Chad again, and talk a little bit with them about what the city needs, what's beneficial to our project that's also beneficial to the city. And we were able to talk about that a little bit. There's kind of three things that came out of that. Dave felt like that by us adding a fire hydrant on the end of that line is very helpful to the fire department to have fire protection down in that area. Chad likes the idea of having a fire hydrant down there because that gives him a clean out, a way to blow the line out, and it's a low spot in the system. So from that point of view, that works very well to have that. The other issue that may or may not be an issue for the city is that we have to move the water line of the existing resident who has been on city water for some time. Now, I know we went into great detail about it, Ray, on whose lateral it is. Is it the city's lateral? Is it their lateral? Is it from the meter to the house that's on our property? You know, but basically the meter is on our property. The lateral runs directly across our property. And so when we pipe that irrigation ditch, we got to move the water. And so right now, if we were not to petition for city water, we've gone ahead and forged ahead with the project. And we're going to go ahead and drill wells. So we meet the criteria. We've gone ahead and done the preliminary drawings. We've met with the health department. You know, and so to me, from my side of it, not the city side of it, but from my side of it, it makes completely no sense whatsoever for me to move the city's water line, move the city's meter, okay, off our property that has no easement or anything on there. Okay, move it and do it properly, record an easement, get it set up right, get a new lateral going into the existing home. And then towards the city limits inside of that, we're now going to drill 3 wells on the property, or 2, we might share a well, depending on when we drill the well. I don't like the idea of drilling wells. When we have city water right there, I don't like the idea of drilling wells into the aquifer because I don't know what it does. I hear stories all the time of more wells we put into our aquifer, the bigger the potential of having one of our other wells, city well or the neighbor's well or somebody else's well to try. And we live in the desert, and so I kind of have always thought, well, I've been of the opinion secondary water is a great idea. I've been of the opinion don't drill more wells than what we need to have. And so when I look at that, I completely understand Gary's concern. And I think it's a legitimate question that needs to be answered, but our project is a unique situation. And I think the other question is, what does the city get out of it? You know, Ray's concern is that they just have to maintain another couple hundred feet of the pipe. You know, they're going to generate some revenue and fees off the water service and some impact fees and some things like that. And so I'm looking at it saying, okay, what is the benefit? See, I think it's a fair question to ask, what does the city get for giving us the water? And so when we extend that line, we're spending more money on putting a fire hydrant in, fixing the line, and doing that work than probably what we'll spend to drill a well. So financially for us, it probably 6s, you know, depending on what happens. It's probably financially, it's probably going to be about the same cost for us to build those homes in, whether we use the city water or whether we don't use the city water. But my hang up, and the reason I wanted to circle back with with everyone tonight is because it just seems to make, for somebody who lives here, it just seems to make more sense to petition for water service in the unique situation that we're in. I'm happy to answer questions. I won't take much time.
Is it, Mayor,
Go ahead.
Denise, is it possible to pull this map up on the screen?
The other thing is that I'm not even asking tonight that anybody makes a decision on this. This is something that if you guys want to take back to a work meeting, we don't need a decision tonight. We can continue to move forward on our project right now. We're not being delayed based on this. But I just think it's something that, I'd like you guys to consider of what really makes sense. What's a good idea to do?
I apologize for this. I wasn't at the last meeting, so I just wanted to.
Any question
Clear
at
on
this point?
something. I can see it in my packet. I suppose I could talk through it, just looking at it on my packet without bringing it up on the screen.
And Tony, I think Gary, if you want to share your concerns with Tony,
Well, they're looking that up. Let me just turn over to Gary. Gary, would you give us your thoughts? Well, they're pulling that up on the screen.
Sure. John wasn't recorded for the last 15 minutes. I think he ought to say it over again. I think the major concern, and this isn't Gary's concern, this is just a concern that you've got a decision to make as to exactly what the policy is going to be for extending extraterritorial service. The city is, there used to be a provision in state law that said that all urban development should take place in cities while rural development should remain in the counties. And that's really the purpose of cities, is to provide urban services such as water, sewer, that type of thing. And so annexation is strongly encouraged. So to annex them into your boundaries brings them in under your rules. Under the rules of the city, anyone who wants to subdivide property for the purpose of building homes would all be required to meet the same rules. That's the whole purpose of annexation, is to be able to bring them into the city and have them comply with city ordinances. What happens if you extend service to, and I'm just talking, let's talk about new development right now, not existing. Every once in a while, there's a well that goes dry and there's an existing home somewhere. And I know that we've extended services to older homes, like the one I think that you're talking about has been there forever that I can remember. And there are others on the north side that have been there forever. Those are existing homes, and there are circumstances where the city considers that, and it is your decision as a city council as to whether or not you extend that extraterritorial service. Most things can be resolved, such as what do you charge for it, those types of things. But the issues become when you've got new development that's coming in and wants to connect to water service outside of the city. What are the rules? Do you want to create a new set of rules for new development outside of the city that are different than a developer would have to comply with inside the city? And that's essentially, the question. And then the answer to that question is, if you're going to apply the same rules, because it's necessary that you have the same size streets, the same quality of utilities, that type of thing before it comes into the city, there's one of two things that happen. Either you compromise those rules for somebody wanting to build outside of the city and just connect on to certain utilities. And then eventually somebody's got to pay to bring it up to that standard, which is the city's standard. And it's usually the city that has to end up in doing that, to bring it up to that standard when it's new development. So that's the reason that, to the extent possible, annexation has to occur before new development can occur
within the city, they have to be able to meet the city standards. Otherwise, you got a piece of property out there that's going to be connected to municipal services that will not meet the city standard, and you got an even bigger problem. One of the instances, I think, in this one is that eventually there has to be a sewer line that goes under a road, right? Isn't that right? Is it a sewer line or, yeah, it's a sewer line that will have to go underneath the road. And that's ultimately when the sewer comes that direction, that's exactly what's going to happen. Well, the question is, you know, if they were in the city, we would say, no, you have to build that sewer line now. And you have to connect it up. You have to put the main in, you have to, everything has to be there and ready. But if all they want is water now, and you're going to wait for the rest of the services to come, including the road, you know, the size of the road and everything else, then the question is, once these homes are inhabited, who's going to pay to put those things in when they actually do want to come into the city limits? When they do want to add sewer, you know, to their properties. And the answer is ultimately the city has to end up paying for those things. So your decision as to what your policy is going to be, it shouldn't be a Gary policy. That's not what it should be. Just a general policy of whether or not development should occur outside the city with extraterritorial extension of services, you know, one at a time or two at a time or three at a time, or whether it should occur, we should wait until it can actually annex into the city boundaries and it can come in, because annexation is your strongest point. I've told you that a lot of times, that you can ask for just about, you can ask for that sewer line to be built out there. You can ask for the sewer line to be connected up and a main to be put in that is maybe bigger than what you could normally ask for, because annexation is your opportunity to get everything that your citizens would have to otherwise pay for put in so that they don't have to pay a cent when this development comes in. So that's the philosophy behind kind of what I proposed to you last meeting. And John is one of the best developers I know. He really is. If we dealt with John in Layton City, we'd be a very happy bunch. But the problem is it's not John and it's not his development, whether he build a quality home or whatever. It's who pays ultimately for the improvements that will have to be put in to meet the city standard. When they're in the city, we can control it. When they're out of the city, you can't. You just can't. They can pretty much build whatever they need to build. And so you're making a decision on policy, and the policy is, what do you do about new development outside the city? We're not talking about, you know, an existing home. We're talking about new development outside of the city. So,
Is there a state code or state ordinance on that now, or that change? The reason I asked that question, I've got a letter here from August 29th, 1983, where it says, Morgan City has adopted policy to serve residents living outside the city boundary as now established by the legal description on file at the Morgan City County Courthouse with public utilities, including water, sewer. Then it says the only residents outside the city limits to be served with city utilities in accordance with Utah state law and Morgan City policy are those who are presently being served. It is not the intent for the city to establish new utility services with new customers living outside the city limits. That state law changed, or that's still in effect?
oh, that's still in effect. It allows, that law says, the only exception to that is it allows you to extend services outside the city limits and charge more for those services. That's the only, so it does allow you
It
to.
does allow you to
to
extend.
extend.
Okay, when I read this, it said it didn't. So I just want to clarify.
Yeah, in
that.
83, it
Okay.
might not have, I can't remember. That far back.
And I don't know if we have a city ordinance or not. This indicated there was an ordinance back then.
Yeah.
City ordinance that prohibited as well.
I think you're right. I think there was.
And if you look in the documents, in the petition, you know, we will be paying more for those services
Everybody does.
than a resident would be paying for those services. So, like I said, from a cost perspective, you know, it's not going to save us any money at all to hook onto the city water. But I think everybody's aware, in the state of Utah and especially in Morgan, we have a housing crisis. We do not have enough homes. We do not have enough infrastructure. We do not have enough places to build homes. And if we go to a one shoe fits all policy and just say, well, we just have to have this, there's no unique situations out there where we may want to extend a service that's already on the property. This is a service, this is a utility that's already on our property. It's already there. And so what we're doing is we're limiting ourselves to develop some places that would make complete sense and have no impact to what we're doing, where we could have hopefully some, when I say affordable housing, hopefully we could get some homes that were somewhat reasonable. And so that's just kind of my perspective on the whole thing. And that's kind of why I wanted to come back and visit with everybody on it and see.
Let me see if I can talk about what I'm hearing you say. You're saying you don't think it costs any more to do it with or without city water? Costs similar to you.
Yeah, we can do it without city water, but we're gonna drill some wells.
You're saying advantage from Dave and the city guys to have a fire hydrant that's out in the county.
It
So I'm not
it
sure
does,
I'm not sure
Dave
it's
felt
serious.
like it had a big advantage to him
I'm not
as
sure
a
it's-
fire.
Right. I'm not sure it's city responsibility to provide fire protection for the county.
Sorry, I didn't understand that right.
I'm not sure it's city responsibility to provide fire protection for part of the county.
Well, I mean, I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
All I know is that I look at things a little bit different than Gary does. I kind of cowboy eyes them once in a while, okay? And if I'm gonna extend a water line, while I have that water line dug up, I think it's a good idea to put what we need to put on that water line so that we can flush out the city's water system, so that we can provide fire protection that's gonna go both directions. If that mountain caught on fire and the wind was blowing, it's gonna burn down the homes in the city as easily as it's gonna burn down the homes out. Fires don't understand where the annexation, the declaration starts, ends, where the city boundary starts or ends, So I just look at it from a practical point of view. And I visited with them a little bit about that. From our point of view, as far as building a few homes, we're able to meet the requirements without, if you were to deny our petition, we're able to meet the requirements. And I know you guys get paid big bucks. So I'm not arguing with what you do. I just think it just makes so darn much sense because we have this, we've allowed this water line to go through here. And so now we have to deal with that, or we have to let the city deal with it, okay? Now, I'm not gonna make the city deal with it. I'm gonna have to deal with it. But anybody else could let this situation of that home become your problem, right? They just say, hey, we don't, you don't have any right to have your water line on our property, I mean, we would never do that, Ray,
But hold on. It would never be the city problem.
Pardon?
Because that's a private line. Past that, that's a private line. So it never would be a city problem. It's whoever owns that
Well,
property.
part of it's a private line and part of it's your line. So part of it's your line that, from the meter back, I would assume would be the city's line. From the meter forward would be, they're both on our property. And there's nothing recorded on there for an easement or anything like that. But that's not, Ray, that's not my point. That's not gonna be a problem. That's not gonna be a problem because we're gonna deal with that.
Okay, and go ahead, I have questions.
The meters right there where it says city water line, correct?
Yeah, I would assume
Where's the city boundary?
the city boundaries clear back to clear back to the landmark lane. Is that what they call it?
Yeah.
City boundaries clear back to landmark lane. You know, so you,
Yeah. This is city boundary.
Well,
It's,
that's the one in the cemetery that you got your mouse on. Landmark Lane's the next one down.
yeah, the
isn't it?
one towards Porterville.
Like a,
This-
it's a dirt.
Yeah, but Landmark,
road,
this is
right
the
about where
cemetery,
that
right?
mark
Right.
starts.
That's landmark there.
Yeah. Paul Russell's place.
So right there is
I'm
landmark,
let-
where your mouse, where you're scrolling right there, Ty.
Where?
Right there where it's scrolling, landmark, because it goes up, then it comes up with those couple of houses there, right there where it's mouse cursor. is.
Okay, I can see, like, you can see the cemetery.
Yeah, the cemeteries.
So landmark's the
There you
next
go.
one down, right?
But our city water line goes clear down to there.
Yeah.
You're on it.
yeah, there's an 8-inch line.
Because
It
the
goes clear
services
down
go
there.
on this side of State Street. See, the sea property comes clear down here. So that line services people on this side of State Street.
So the city or
They go under the road then.
See, there's a map.
Oh.
Here's the same thing that shows you.
see what he's saying
These
there.
properties here are serviced by that line. That's why the line comes to.
I wanted to scroll my, I can scroll mine up. Can't scroll his up.
You just had it on that other.
Well, I was gonna scroll up, but I got
This
mine
is the
pulled
boundary
up.
line,
so-
wasn't it?
No,
Can you
this,
get?
this black line here is the city now. Only goes to here.
So these are being serviced.
Mhm.
These are in the city.
They're being- No, these are here. It's on this side of the road.
Oh, on this side.
The other side of the road.
Yeah,
But they are being
this side of the
serviced
road.
by city water though, right?
Yes, they are.
These
These properties are already.
Because the boundaries are.
There's this
It's not
black
on
line
Is
the
it-
wall.
right here.
Yeah, okay, all right, okay.
Not on the shared screen.
Okay, that's annexation.
Okay,
So
this is the boundary.
these are not in annexation declaration.
Okay.
So John, Gary's a cowboy. He wears cowboy boots to the rodeo. Raised in Calgary.
Ask another question.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay, so Gary, I think I heard you say this, but clarify it for me. So if the city annexes a piece of property into the city, it's the city's responsibility to make all those services available to that annexation. Is that correct?
That's correct.
At the city's dime.
Now, like I say, that's your strongest point. So you can lay those responsibilities on the developer when they come in for annexation. But once they're annexed into the city, you have an obligation to provide the services that are necessary. If you annexed it and didn't have an annexation agreement or didn't require the improvements to be put in, then the only answer is the city eventually has to provide for that citizen, for those citizens. And if a developer has an empty piece of ground that you annex into the city without providing for them to provide water, sewer, streets, those other things, then the city would have to ultimately do that. That's,
So it is
But
on
if
this
you had a
side, comes
developer
here.
who wanted you to
down this
annex
side
a
of the
piece of property.
These are
in the
this,
city,
this side, this side's only.
You could, you could,
over and goes like.
you could have an agreement that would
Those are
state
still
that
missing.
the developer has to provide that
These are
water
not-
line and that
these are in the
sewer
county.
line.
yes,
Do they have city water?
And whatever's necessary to come into the city, correct?
yeah, that would be a
Does.
condition of the annexation,
Then
So they
that
were
would be an
outside the-
agreement of Some sort.
This has.
annexation agreement.
Annexation agreement.
13.3.
Yes, it does. These have.
Yeah,
so let me,
the only thing that I would request, whatever you end up in doing tonight, they'll take a snapshot of that. And that will be the set of rules by which you will govern any annexation of vacant property or property that wants to be developed into the city. Those would be the new set of rules that you'll adopt. Up
it's a-
until now, it's pretty much been, it has to be annexed in order to develop. I'm just talking raw development. I'm not talking about, a home that needs water or something of that nature. You guys have been very good about that, but new, so what number of units are you going to allow in, for example, before you start to require annexation and improvements to be put in according to the city standards? Is it 1? Is it 2? Is it 3? What if somebody came in with 6? Is that going to be enough? Is there some requirement that if you need water service up in that area, fire service in that area, that plays into it? And, somehow to the mayor's point, that's county area. The county really has a responsibility to serve that. One of the little things that we know is that anything outside of the city, the state puts out those fires and takes responsibility for the cost of those fires. Once you annex it into the city boundaries, we're responsible. We contract with the county to put those out. So I mean, there's all those things that when you're dealing with vacant property that are different than dealing with occupied properties. But you're making a set of rules tonight. Just make them as clear as you can. And it sounds like,
Gary, I think you make a pretty good point. I mean, possibly, and like I said, I don't know that we need to make a decision tonight, but possibly maybe this needs to be looked at by the number of units that somebody like I would definitely never walk in the room and ask to develop a whole subdivision with just water only. Number one, it wouldn't work, but that's something that I would never ask to do. But where we have some unique pieces of property around our city and that borders around around the county, there may be other circumstances where 1 or 2 homes would be appropriate to provide, maybe to provide services to that would allow someone to build their son a home, or would allow somebody to, provide us a little bit more affordable housing, or would allow somebody to take down an old home and rebuild something. So I think there is, and I don't know, Gary, if that resolves your concern, but I get your concern with it.
John, just a second. We've got some conversations going on and I can't do both. Could we, and I think there's probably some things being said that we all ought to hear, and particularly out of respect to John, listen to his
No problem.
comments there.
Apologize. Thank you, David.
Yeah, if we do have a conversation, let us all be part of it because it's good information. Yeah.
Good point.
Okay. I was just having trouble.
I think the other question I have for Gary and would be what do we do in the city with the homes that we're providing water service to? I mean, we got quite a few homes that are in these unique situations that we're providing services to. What is the city's obligation to the people that own the old Ivan Carter home? I don't really know their name, so I'm using that. Everybody should know that, It's not your house till you die anyway, if you buy a house in Morgan,
there's a genealogy to it. I know.
Once the new people move in, then it becomes your house, Gary. So Ivan's old home, what is the city's responsibility for that water line that's there? I've seen situations where, the cities end up responsible for the lateral in certain circumstances, they've been providing water down there.
That's a really good question. Recent changes in the state rules provide that there is no more protection for cities for behind the meter anymore. Because the rule change said that a public water provider has to make sure that they can provide water all the way to the actual use, even if it's behind the meter. And that's a new state rule that came into play about a year ago, which is really concerning for most municipalities. We actually have people sign saying that they will be responsible you know, we know the city is responsible, but we'll cover the city by paying for any damages that occur beyond the meter. So the answer to your question is the city is responsible for that. We're responsible for our water system and whoever it services.
So that'd probably be part of an obligation for if you're in the city boundaries to provide those essential services. It's an obligation. We don't have a choice. We have to provide water, power, sewer, and roads.
And the reason you try to get it on a new home is if you've ever tried to get it, if you've ever tried to even have somebody connect up to sewer because they're within 300 feet of a sewer line, that's like,
Okay.
I could compare it to some really, really strong metaphors, but it's really, really tough to get somebody to connect up after the fact or to put an improvement in after the fact, you know, because you've delayed it. And so the city ends up in putting those in. That's the only thing I'm saying. That's the reason annexation is such an important.
And Dave, we addressed that by saying we would stub out sewer lines on anything we did so that if the sewer ever did come through, like if that subdivision across the street that's being talked about, concept or hypothetically, if that were ever to occur, then, you know, we would have things stubbed out so it wouldn't be a burden upon the homeowner to connect if they wanted to.
So that's an interesting question, Gary. In this situation where the home is several hundred feet away from the meter, and at one point that homeowner owned all the ground that the line runs through. Now they sold that ground, the line runs through, someone else owns that ground, the line runs through. What's our legal obligation to still provide city water to that home that runs through somebody else's ground now?
So the way that the health department or the Division of Water Resources would look at it is we would go after the property owner to take care of that. And even though it runs across somebody else's ground, there's an easement there. And so we would primarily do that. But ultimately, if the property owner doesn't do it and you've got water that is not clean, that is going into that home, the city would be responsible for taking over that system or repairing that system. That's just the way that the rule reads. And there were too many like that, like what you just said,
Yeah, yeah.
where you've got people that can't afford to, 700 feet of line is a lot of line.
Yeah.
And so are you going to let people drink infected water or water that's not?
Depends on who they are, Gary.
Yeah. Layton, we do that all the time. We drink secondary, but the bottom line is you know, somebody's got to fix that line. And that's part of the problem with not having lines and mains and that type of thing that meet our standards.
So going back to,
Yeah.
I think we kind of got try not to monopolize your whole meeting again like we did, because I didn't leave any time for the chickens last time and I felt bad about that. So my concern is that this situation with the water line has to be resolved. The city has to be part of that. And we're going to help and we're going to do our part of it, but that water line has to be improved and it has to be moved. And, you know, and I don't even know, once we dig through there, I don't even know what we're going to find, but we need to get an easement across our property that the city can have access to that water line. It's city water. We got to get an easement there. I don't know how you cut those people off and tell them they can't have city water anymore. So we need to put easements in there. We need to fix that situation and we're going to do that. We're not going to create a problem for the city, you know, and, but at the same time, now we're going to go ahead and we're going to have to do that. And then we're going to have to go ahead and drill some wells on the property. And those are my main concerns. I'm kind of like, you know, why? It's kind of like wiping before you poop. Why are we going to do that? You know, why? And I don't like the idea of drilling those. I don't like the idea of drilling any more wells than we need to drill. And so that's why I wanted to circle back with everybody. And I think that if I were in your seat, I would be concerned about what Gary talks about. And I'd be concerned about the Pandora's box situation. But But at the same time, I think there has to be some circumstances where we make exceptions to certain rules to try to, and do it properly. Don't just say, okay, do it, but do it properly so that we can have affordable housing, so we can build, so somebody can add some nice homes to some areas that, you know, some places, mostly within the city that, you know, may not meet, maybe a corner of the property is surveyed wrong and they don't have quite, you know, they're 1/10 of a square foot off on enough land to build a home. You know, that would be a situation where I think if I was on the council, I'd want a home built there, you know? And so I think this is a unique situation. This is not a 20-lot subdivision. We're talking about building 2 or 3 homes there. The third lot may or may not even work for us. We don't know yet. We're getting there. And so we're just trying to resolve those issues with it. And so those are my main, you know, those are the reason that I wanted to come back and visit more with the city. And I guess if we don't hook onto the city water, my question would be to the city, is the city willing to help us, you know, fix that water line? You know, is the city willing to participate in that? And to me, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, I think, you know, when you look at it for what's in it for the city, you know, there's a little bit in it for the city. We get this situation that's gonna someday have to be resolved properly. And the city's we're gonna cover the cost of everything, and the city's gonna collect a out-of-city fee for the water. And so, I mean, that would kind of be my argument on it. And like I said, if we need to take time and think about it, I'm okay with that. I don't necessarily need a decision tonight. We're gonna continue to move forward with, you know, working on our project, but there will come a point in time where we're gonna either go one way or another on it.
Tony?
Mayor, can I approach that map or?
Sure.
a pointer or something?
Well, while you're approaching it,
Just walk down there.
So where is the city water line at, right here?
It comes all the way down. So if you put up this other drawing that, you know,
So where's that meter?
here's the meter. If you look here, there's the cowboy eyes drawing right there.
Where is it on that other map? I mean, the one that we-
right kind of where the road bends. See, it's right here where the road bends, where the circle is.
So where is it on this map?
It'd be down.
It's gonna be right here.
Yep.
Right there.
Ty's mouse
Yep,
is on
right there the
street.
mouse is. And this house straight across the street to the west is served by city water. It's right here. Right, yes, Ty. Yeah, that has city water. The meter's sitting right there where the pointer is.
And so the secondary water also comes down there that we'll have to deal with. And
So that's-
and whether it goes across Highway 66 about at Paul Russell's old home, or whether it comes down to us and then goes across to Don Russell's house, we're not certain. Walter didn't know today when I was visiting with him on it. But if it comes down our side, we're gonna have to deal with that secondary line also.
So I assume that's Ivan Ricardo, one right there. Right there. Right? Yeah, okay, all right. So that's being serviced now by what? A lateral coming,
From the water, from the meter, clear up here on the band. Right here's a meter, is a single source line comes down this house.
Let me see if I can
okay, that's the Carter.
get it figured out.
This one is the here.
Yeah.
Here.
Mm-hmm.
That's being serviced by a lateral, right?
From the meter.
Well, so the 8-inch line comes down to right, move your finger up, right, a little
Right,
further up,
to-
right in there,
To the meter.
right about the end of that dirt spot.
8-inch line.
And then somehow the meter sits up close to the ditch. So the meter's clear up in the trees up off the road.
So it's not down there right away.
And then that lateral somehow just got dug across the, across the lot and put in there. There are a couple hydrants out by the barn, but they don't have the same size pipe on them when we excavated them.
Gary, I think I know the answer to this question. Annexation is not appropriate unless city can supply all services. Is that correct? So we can annex it if sewer is not a possibility. Is that
Or
correct?
if the developer puts in those services.
If it's not available. Okay.
I'd have a few comments, Ray.
Go ahead.
I wasn't here in the last meeting that sounds like there was some discussion, but I went back to our work session that we had on April 27th. There were a couple of references to a meeting, John, between you and the city. And I think Ernie was part of that. Did that ever happen?
Development review. I think it was a development review meeting.
Yeah, we met
Initially,
several weeks, a month or so prior to that other.
Did that address any of these issues here?
no, it brought up, I think it just, that,
Open Pandora's box, I think, for Ty,
Okay.
yeah, so the development review, just kind of get a concept of what he's looking for. And that's at the point where we decided, should he ask for annexation or just
Mhm.
water service? And then here's all of the potential questions that need to be answered.
So there seemed to be a consensus on the part of the city, that is, that if there were annexation, that it would need to meet the requirements, i.e. all of the services that we would request or ask for from a regular developer. So in my mind, and John, in your own statement, you said it's not feasible to put in a sewer system. You'll be using.
Not for two homes.
Yeah, you'll be using a septic tank, fair enough. So I'd like to maybe focus just a little bit on a direction apart from the water. It appears that maybe other than what we've already talked about, water's there and it may make sense to move forward. But that the only way that a sewer system will become feasible would be additional rooftops. Is that fair, going down through
Yeah,
the?
so the only way really, and especially we have an elevation issue also. So like from where this property is, the sewer won't gravity flow uphill to that, but it will flow down through Fox Point and,
Can you pump
down.
that up and then down?
well, yeah, but you really wouldn't because of the terrain of the city is that if they ever develop where they're proposing to develop, which I believe will happen,
Mhm.
I think it will happen. That sewer line's gonna run right across from us and it's gonna run right down and it'll gravity flow right into Fox Point and right
Right
down
across
past and
the-
right down Island Road to the pump
Across the
station,
church there.
Yeah. So it just can't get back up to Paul Russell's old home,
Mhm.
but it's gonna actually come down,
Sure.
eventually it'll come down
Okay.
the other way, if that ever went in. But if that never went in, it just.
Yeah, so the feasibility aspect of it would be economic for sure. If the city annexed and they were required to provide those elements, those services, in my mind, that feasibility wouldn't be any more economically viable for the city than it would be for you. In other words, there wouldn't be any reason to take on that expense or liability. So I guess the question I have, Gary, would be for you, and that is that separated? Suppose we do provide water service, but we do not annex. Can that water service stand alone in that, yeah, we have to continue to provide that indefinitely and so forth without an obligation or a liability to put in a sewer line? And Gary mentioned in the work session, more than one occasion, cities and municipalities do not like septic systems. And I think, Gary, you've mentioned of a case in eastern Utah, Duchesne or Vernal, where a 43 unit subdivision, the drain field failed. Now, somebody's got to provide sewer, and who's going to pay for that? If a drain field were to fail here and that required a line down across the Rock Church, who pays for that? Well, that's borne by the city in my mind. So my question is,
Just as far as that goes, the current Weber Morgan, regulations aren't gonna allow that. Matter of fact, every home that's built has to have alternate drain field sites. So, when you put a septic tank in, it's not like you can put it on a 10,000 square foot lot or have a shared septic or something like that. You have to have the current drain field, and then if it fails, you have to have a backup, area,
sure.
for a drain
Would
field.
is there, I guess, on Gary's part, is there, and so maybe two questions. The first would be, would there, suppose everything, the primary, secondary, tertiary, whatever, fail, and where the city's got, and that would be with annexation for sure. The city's got to provide the service, then what do we do, and who, that's a liability, and who covers that? But number two, and I guess the question is, can the water be provided without the, and no annexation, hence without the annexation, it's still a county property. Drain field fails, it's a county, it's a landowner concern, it's not the city concern. Is that an option?
Well, if the drain field fails, you have to go with a mechanical system of some sort. And what ended up happening in Roosevelt was the state ended up paying to connect it up to the city's system. And so you got a kind of a hybrid where they ran the line. They had to run the line because they essentially rescued those 52 homes or whatever it was.
Mhm.
And the state put that in, and Roosevelt had to figure out a way to accommodate all those systems, all those tanks. So
Those homes in the city limits.
no, they were outside the city limit.
Okay.
So, but the city was providing water. And so providing water, but septic tank, that's a bad combination, quite frankly, is when you provide water, city water, and don't provide for sewer. That's the reason when you have new development, you get both, right? To provide city water and septic tank was a bad combination there because the septic tanks failed. And so the city ended up being the recipient of the sewer. For
Sure,
those
but
52
if we
units.
were not if it weren't part of the city, I guess the question that I have is, would it be our problem? Would it be our concern?
It is because the county doesn't provide any services. They don't provide a sewer service.
So,
We're the only ones that provide electrical, water, and sewer.
so there would be an implied situation, maybe because we are providing the water, that we would be responsible for the sewer.
Yeah,
Um,
that's what happened.
Because my next question would have been, if your answer was no, well, then why don't we provide water all the way to Mountain Green?
Yeah,
You
right.
know,
Right.
yeah, so
Yeah.
there's a reason we don't do that. Hence, maybe it's that implication that because the primary water is being supplied, that it brings along the secondary or the sewer aspect with it.
Yeah, it's,
And I would never come in here and ask for a 46 lot subdivision with water only and a septic system, that's just a stupid idea,
Mhm.
So, but I guess the reason I'm petitioning for water service primarily is I have to deal with the water line that's already there.
Okay.
I mean, that's really the thing that makes the most sense. And I think maybe a way to solve Gary's concern, maybe not, would be to maybe adopt a rule that would allow for a situation that's limited
Mhm.
by a small number of lots, and maybe that would be, one, maybe that'd be two, maybe
Yeah.
that'd be three. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, I mean, I'm asking for water for potentially 3 lots, but
that
maybe
was-
the answer to the question would be 2. Do you see what I'm saying? I'm just trying to come up with something that resolves this problem, but also is gonna resolve some other problems in that
Bingo.
we have the same problem other places in the,
Yeah, it won't be the last.
it won't be
first
the
or
last
yeah.
one. And
Well, and even in the work session, there was more than one reference made to a policy that would address that. But it was also recognized that that probably would take longer than the time we have here to, accommodate John.
sure.
So
So-
just make a comment on
Yeah.
that. The reason why we even have the problem is because of that exact scenario where we provided water outside of the city limits and outside of annexation. And so, that's kind of that idea. I know it's unfortunate that you have to deal with the line where it is, but you also don't need to develop right now either. So it's a timing question for me, like we talked about. And at the point of annexation is when it matters most, but it goes connected with land use, water, sewer, power. The entire review is based on, picking a zone, the entire thing. And there's a lot of properties that are waiting to be developed, but they're waiting for somebody else to develop so that then they're in line, right? Because you don't leapfrog. And so,
And I
where this,
understand exactly where you're coming from on that, but I
right,
mean, I just don't know that in our community, we can go with a one shoe fits all
Well-
situation, because we have to resolve existing issues,
right, without creating future ones. And so what you're just saying is let's make a policy where we extend it on a limited basis or one or two at a time, which doesn't solve future problems, like just waiting till the point of annexation and get it all figured out. Build in the county or annex. So those are the two options in my mind. But I understand what you're saying, and I wasn't gonna speak up unless I was called upon, but that's my recommendation is for the city to wherever we came from. I'm the first city manager, and I've inherited a lot of things over the last 50 years. And sometimes it's like, well, this doesn't make any sense. And I find myself saying, well, I'm at least glad to know why or how it came about, or that there was an agreement in place, even though the problems we deal with today were created by decisions in the past. And
Prior city councils.
I like to work our way out of that and not leave a future problem. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
And I appreciate that. And if you guys want to table this again, have a work session, whatever you guys would like to do, I'm okay with that. I don't want to monopolize more time on it, but it is a situation that, for us, it's a situation that we want to handle the right way. And there's going to be some other situations in the city that you're going to have to deal with, that probably handling this the right way would probably resolve that also.
And I also have appreciated working with you and just being like, there's no problem that you can't figure out how to solve, right? I'm serious.
We need
Like
you on
that's
the
a,
council, John.
that's a very strong point, but setting, public policy as a whole separate matter. And it does make sense, right? On so many levels. And just like you said, we're moving forward one way or another. We've decided to develop. We're doing this, but there's a water line we got to move, and why it was installed the way it was, where the meter was set, all of that. No idea. But that's one day somebody decided, well, for whatever reason, let's provide water to this one home. And at the time, we only tracked it to the meter. And at that point, we said, take it from there.
It's probably the right thing to do. We're not, as a community, we're not in the business of drawing boundaries and not helping or caring for our neighbors, or not trying to create the best environment to raise our kids. And so we got to deal with, we got to deal with stuff like this. And that's why I'm saying, so from our perspective, I'll just summarize it like this. Even though we could say this is the city's problem and we're going to the city deal with it, we're going to go turn their water off or whatever, we're not going to do that. So whatever you guys decide, we'll work with the city and resolve the issue with the current water line. So if you decide that it's not good public policy or not a good idea to do it, we'll deal with that. We'll work with the city and do what we have to do to fix the problem that's existing. So I don't think you guys ought to feel any pressure about that. I'd love to put the pressure on you about that, but we're not going to dump the problem onto the city. We're going to resolve it. I would just ask that we try to resolve it in a way that makes sense. Let's not, stub our toe over something where we're just trying to, we have a boundary or we have a hypothetical that will probably never happen. Because we can come up with hypotheticals of what ifs all day long. And that's why Gary gets paid big dollars to come up with all the what ifs,
That's what he
And,
defends.
and I think he does, Gary, I think you do a great job, and I see his position. I do. And so I'm happy to work on it however you guys would like me to. And if you want to have a work session and come back, I'm happy to do that too. So however you guys, whatever direction you want to go on it.
Further questions, thoughts, input?
Yeah,
So get,
I'm not sure that there's, I think we've vetted the situation pretty good. On John's behalf, in my mind, we'd have enough information that we could make a decision that we don't need to kick the can down the road any farther and then just move forward with that decision. If anyone else feels they need more time, then, so state it.
I think I'd love to have some more time to.
Okay.
I really do.
Tony?
may I direct a question to our legal counsel?
Sure.
And also referring to what Ty said. So am I hearing that hypothetically, if we were to go ahead and allow this to move forward, that would essentially set our policy for the future in allowing a couple of homes to tie into our water without annexing? Is that kind of what I heard you say?
The best example in the whole world in answering your question is what you see on the property today. You've allowed one connection, and now they're coming in and they're saying, you've already allowed one, let's add three, just three. And the next one that comes in, we had one for 6, will be 6, because we just had one for 6. That came in just a short time ago. They are going to annex. But the question I have for you is, where are you going to stop? You don't have to live with things that you've done in the past that may have been right or wrong. What you got to do is look at the future and whatever your policy is. But the best example, the best answer to your question, Tony, is you're looking at the answer to that question right now. You've got one home on a 700-foot lateral that has to be replaced by somebody. And thank goodness there's a developer that is coming in, and whether he develops in the county or whatever, has to fix that. Otherwise, you'd have a 700-foot lateral that somebody would have to fix in the future.
Well, it would be the city's responsibility.
Yeah,
So
the
I just-
city'd have to.
I just add on that
I think the piece so that you missed, Gary, is that, what I'd like the city to say is, in a situation where the water line is already there, running across the property, it's already there, that the city would provide water for, a certain number of homes, or if the water line's inside of a home that they're already putting water to, if the water line runs through the property, that it makes perfect sense for the city to provide that water inside of that area where that water line is.
so what if
I mean, this is unique. I just got to tell
Right,
you,
it is. It
And
is.
maybe it's not, Gary, maybe it's not unique.
Yeah, it's-
Maybe it's
Well,
just
but-
like,
I get it.
But what you're
it's
saying
not.
is if you do, to Tony's question, if you do go down this road, then what you're saying is that we're willing to, with a list of conditions and parameters, right? So that it's consistent. And so as, on the administrative side, that's what I strive for is just consistency and clarity, right? That's good public policy, no matter how that falls, right? So do you model all of the future, we allow it under these conditions so that it fits this situation and then see how it plays out in other properties? Because there's a whole nother side of town that has its own situation. So if it's past my property, if it's in front of my property, right? But you're doing that all outside of the rest of the city process with land use, roads, curb gutter, sidewalk, water sewer. So that's the caveat. And so when you all get to your deciding factor, I don't think that those terms or those conditions have to be decided. You're just deciding, do we want to do it outside of annexation or not? If you want to allow it on some, other basis, then that's what we have to go down the road of. We need some time to create what those special circumstances may or may not be so that it's consistent and makes sense. Pretty difficult. To get that right. And I don't know when or how, but we do have some areas that are served outside of the city boundaries. And to be honest, just not having that land use discussion is a big factor for me, because although the homes are being built, it's on State Street, and my own personal opinion is at the point of annexation, that should be higher density. That should be more homes on to whatever extent possible, because that's a major road, right? So if you can pull it off the main street, and it's not possible in this situation, but those factors are part of why you say, let's wait. And at the point of annexation, we pick a zone, we do the full process, and hopefully make the most efficient use of all of our utilities. So.
Gary, how has Layton handled similar situations?
We don't allow new development without annexation.
Okay,
That's the way most cities
Just-
handle it.
period.
We do have existing homes that run out of water, and we've provided them with extensions of our water line. But there is no new development unless it's in the city boundaries, because we need the curb, gutter, sidewalk. We need the impact fees. We need the things that make development look like all the other development in the city. Is it fair to let a developer who develops 3 homes outside of the city not have to develop all of the things that a person in the city would have to develop? And I'm not talking specifically about John, but what about the next person that wants to develop just 6 homes, just 6,
Sure.
because there's a water line that runs really close to my development. And so you get 6 homes without that service and those entities. And that it's a slippery slope is what you're approving. If you,
So
From a legal standpoint.
yeah, so that same case, so whatever those limiting or whatever factors, if you look at the map, you've also got this side of the street that's got water line in front of it that's currently not in the city.
Mhm.
It has water.
That has water all the way in front of it. So that's just the complicating factor. Is there's other areas in town where you could say, well, it makes sense. And it totally makes sense because you're touching the water line, all that. But how to make a good policy that applies, into the future is the challenge.
Okay. The one thing I thought I knew what I thought I wanted to do at this point. The piece that still puzzling my mind, Gary, is a scenario that we, the city, responsible for that lateral line. Part of it, in my mind, the right of way currently goes through that property. we don't have a right of way out in front of those properties. So we would have to obtain a right of way if we move that lateral line.
I don't think we are responsible for it
Easement.
because we're not the ones creating the change.
I know, that's what I thought, but Gary said we are.
Well,
To provide water to the end home, we have to continue to provide water, but that would just go right back to whoever's creating the change. Just
How
has
would you
to
handle
have to
that
figure
change?
that out. I don't know that we would say, oh, well, let us move this water line in order for you to develop on a property. That's
Help
whoever's causing the issue.
help clarify for me then, Gary.
clarification is that if you
I'm,
got
I'm
somebody,
lost on that concept.
you have somebody who is on our water system, we've allowed them to get on our water system. And they are indigent, have no money, and you got our water going into their unit. And the water is not clean. The health department's gonna look to somebody to fix that. And whoever is providing the water is probably going to have to be the one to fix that if they can't afford to fix it.
Okay.
But are we responsible for it? No. I mean, we're not, we can lien their house, we can charge them for it. But
Foreclose.
the bottom line is whenever you allow something like this, you're going to ultimately pay for it somehow.
You're gonna own it.
You're gonna own it. So, well, you won't own it, but you
Right.
have to fix it so that it's clean, because you can't provide dirty water to the folks.
On the
That's not what
problem.
our system does.
So it may not be our fault, but it's our problem.
But
Right,
it
you're gonna
becomes
own
our
the
problem.
I understand the not clean thing, the water line's bad and so forth, the engine house.
Right?
But
But we don't have to get an easement.
does that law still apply to this situation?
No, well, there's a difference between having to relocate the line and put a new line in and that type of thing. Who's responsible for that? Homeowner's responsible for that. But if something goes bad and something goes south, ultimately the health department's going to look at who's providing the water in this situation. How we collect from that homeowner is up to us. But all I'm saying is we're taking on a responsibility that we don't need to take on. And that's whenever you provide water to somebody, you take that responsibility. And whether it involves putting in a new line, slipping a line, whatever, and then charging them afterwards. But it doesn't become necessarily our system. It's not our system. It still belongs, the lateral still belongs to people. But there's a difference between having to keep the water clean and owning the system. We just took on the responsibility when we provide the water to make sure they get quality water.
Okay.
Like electricity, if we hook somebody up to electricity, same thing, right? We're responsible to make sure that that power works. And we may go back to the person who owns the lateral or the hanging, what do they call it, the service pole. Somebody hit theirs or whatever, but ultimately, when you say to somebody, yeah, we'll provide you with the service, you have to do something. You have to provide that service. Does that make sense? The distinction between those two things?
That's the biggest part of our problem, the line that's there.
Right. Through the middle of your
We can't
property.
just, it's just not something that can get moved. I mean, it's bad. It's in bad shape. It's old. It needs to
That's
just be
their
fixed and
responsibility to fix it.
replaced.
They need to fix it and replace it. I want to make that clear. That's not our responsibility to fix it and replace it. However, if
But Gary, it's not my responsibility either.
you have to move it, it is, right?
Well, I
You have
got
to- if
a
you have to move it to
water
build,
line.
it's your
I've got a water line that's running across my property
Right.
with no easement, no recording,
Or
providing water to a home that I don't own.
And you want to build
Well,
another
I'd
home.
like to.
So you got to change the location of that line.
I get what you're saying. I mean, I think we've all been around and around with it.
okay, Tony.
It becomes our responsibility when the water isn't potable, it sounds like.
To make sure it's potable, whether we need to bring a truck in or whatever we need to do.
As long as it's potable, we're
Potable.
okay.
when you take that responsibility. So,
Can we clarify one thing you said earlier? You said that in the last year, that they passed some legislation that had to do with cities becoming responsible for something behind the meter?
for making sure it is potable, like if I provide water, if I decide I'm going to provide water to that house over there,
Okay,
I'll put the meter on. And if those people can't afford to fix it, water line busts, you get secondary into the line, that type of thing. The state is going to say, well, who's providing these people with water?
are you talking about the lateral? That's
The lateral, yeah.
not the main line, the lateral.
The
going into
lateral.
home.
Who's providing these people with water? And your responsibility for going after those people and getting it fixed is ultimately the water service, the water provider.
You've agreed to provide good water. That's your responsibility.
Crazy rule, in my opinion, but and in fact, all new development, we actually have signed a little document that says, we don't care what the state said, we'll fix it. The HOAs, we have them sign a document that says we'll fix it. But anyway, I think we've.
Yeah, further questions?
Course.
Okay, ready for a motion? I guess you get three options. One would be to approve the petition. One would be to deny the petition. Another would be, I guess, to table it and set a work session to iron out scenarios if you want to do that. Those are some options. Or you have further discussion if you want.
I'll make a motion that we table this until August 24th, and let's have a work session to discuss this.
Is there a second? Okay, seeing none, the motion dies. Do like a second. Is there another motion?
I'll make a motion, Mayor, that I probably should have 2 weeks ago, but wanted everybody to have a clear and concise understanding of what's going on, and it pains me to do it, but I make motion to deny the application, Mayor.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Motion by Jeffrey, second by Tony, to deny the petition to Warren City Council for extraterritorial water services. Any discussion on the motion? Okay. You know, go ahead.
Could we include, not in the motion, but just in the discussion that
Discuss.
where it makes sense, and some of that's legal, so I wouldn't propose but that we'd be amenable to considering, and maybe that's part of the work session that Eric's talking about, considering helping in, because again, I think this is a problem that's come about from prior councils that needs to be resolved, and helping resolve the problem financially.
You don't think you had that part of it?
No, it's not.
You know what you want. If you want to have the motion, you can. Your choice.
Not part of a motion, but
That's
just a discussion.
discussion.
That's what I was kind of thinking we could take care of in the work session, is kind of try to find some kind of agreement here that we can
Sort
work
that out.
around. That's what I was hoping we could do on the 24th in that work session, is come to something that we could both kind of agree with.
Yeah, I think we still could.
If this motion passes, then the motion is passed and there's not a work session to
Right.
rediscuss parts of it.
Right.
If you still feel like you'd like to discuss and work out some details, you could fail this motion. And then, you could then set a time for further discussion. At this point, it'd be still an open item.
Yeah,
Your
I
choice what you wanna
think I'd have a little bit of a feeling that would, and I'll just throw it out, that would say it was a problem caused by a prior council. What can we do to help resolve it? Even if it does involve a financial consideration, but at the same time, I don't want to take on additional responsibility that isn't ours, and maybe there is none. Hence, opportunity for further discussion.
Ty, you wanna talk?
Sorry, Dan, I never do this during council, but just so you understand process, because I don't. But if you do fail the motion, is there a waiting period or a time before you can take it up again? Or you've already failed on a work session? So if you fail the motion, then you're left with the third option kind of by default, correct? Or can they just put it on another agenda and vote again?
Take no action.
There
If-
is a
if you
waiting
take-
period for this.
They could just you could reapply as many times. I just want to make sure that whatever outcome, you know what the process is or what the way.
Some of the things are a year wait period before they can apply again. Is that true on this, Gary?
Okay, that's why I was asking, because
There's no
it's-
wait period on this one?
if there's still more, like however you vote.
Yeah, well, whatever, so.
But it's, you got a motion and a second,
Motion
so
and
if you
second.
finish through with it, then discussion's
Yeah,
over.
we will. Any further discussion? Okay, the motion is that we deny the petition, Morris City Council for exterior water services. If you vote for that, then that does what it says, we deny that petition. And then it's not our place to have further discussion to work things out, just flat denied. To Ty and Gary's point, John could reapply. Or if we fail this motion, then that opens up for either leave it on the table, bring it back, whatever the group wants to do. Okay. Any other discussion on the motion? Okay, Jeffrey,
Aye.
Tony. Eric.
So they voted
I said to,
Deny
they
the
voted.
to deny it.
The motion is to deny, it. They
Wanted
voted.
further
they voted
discussion, you
deny.
would then, you would say nay.
Nay.
And David,
Might be nay.
okay. Tie vote. In this case, the chair exercises the right to vote to break that tie.
That's why you're paid the big bucks.
There's- I'll break the time and vote nay. Therefore, the motion fails. Therefore, we still have the item on the table, on the discussion. A motion to table failed, a motion to deny failed. If there's no action taken, then that item can come back for another meeting, or you could make a motion to accept it. Those are the two options. Leave it.
Can it still be tabled
Unfiled.
again? Can it be tabled again? Tonight?
So-
In the next meeting.
So with the denied motion, the motion is denied. The motion to approve the extraterritorial jurisdiction fails. And so John could bring it back, could request to be brought back in the future if he wished to. But as of today, it wasn't denied, but it wasn't approved. And this is the type of motion that has to be affirmatively approved in order for him to be able to move forward with the plan.
Forward, yeah. It was,
So it would be considered essentially the equivalent of being denied. Because if all motions fail. So he could bring it back, request he bring it back in the future, whatever he desires to do. But as far as the council is concerned, it did not pass. So there is no,
it didn't pass.
it wasn't approved.
There wasn't a vote to fail it, but it didn't pass.
Right.
Okay,
So is that still on the table if anybody wants, if anybody wants to make a motion to approve?
Oh, are you talking in this meeting?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
So that,
Sorry, Ty.
I'm just saying
Yes,
that still hasn't, like,
if someone want to make a motion to approve it as is, that could still be made. Or no action would be what Gary, because there's no
Yeah.
further action from the group. Then it would remain not approved, John can bring it back if we want to have further discussion, or could request a work session through the staff. Or someone can make a motion to approve and proceed that direction. What's the pleasure of the council? Gonna leave it denied? John, bring it back if he wants, or do you want to try and float to prove it?
I'll share my feeling with the precedent-setting nature of an approved motion and exposure down the road. I wouldn't be in favor of approving. At the same time, I'd be in favor of trying to work something out.
I agree with Dave on that.
When I say work something out, not in the motion, but in the
Come
moving of
back.
the line and what we can help with.
Make a motion to approve it, doesn't have to come back work anything out. It's approved as is.
No,
If you make a motion to approve.
right.
That's right.
Yeah, and
Keep my
no,
mouth shut.
my feeling is that we can't go, or I couldn't go forward with approving it.
You could, okay, I thought you were making.
No,
a motion
because
to
of the
approve. Okay.
two
I
reasons, the
misunderstood.
precedentive setting or nature of it. And then second, there's some, in my mind, still some liability that comes along with approving it that not unlike just like Gary says, is a perfect example. We're dealing with some liability that a former council has given us. And I don't want to bring that on down the road with, for example, sewer lines that need to be put in because of a failed system. But I still feel that there is some help that we can do if it's makes sense. And again, in a legal sense, and if we do have some responsibility to help correct the problem, i.e. move lines or whatever it happens to be.
Okay, further discussion.
In other words, we have an obligation to continue providing potable water to the home. And if John can benefit from an improvement or whatever, and we are part of that, it's a win-win for both of us.
Okay, further discussion.
I guess my position is simply this, and I probably owe this to John, is that someone else comes in 6 months just outside the city and wants to hook onto the city water. And I mean, to me, at some point, we gotta have a clean break here. We gotta put an end to this. And or somebody 20 years from now is going to be sitting there thinking that they're now paying for the sins of a previous city council. So that's simply my thought on it. And I just I can think of one instance in my mind right now where if I'm in their shoes, I'm going to come to the city in a few months from now and say, well, why don't you let me hook on too, because you just allowed it not too long ago. So that's my feeling.
20 years from now, you'll still be alive, Tony. They'll look you up.
Yeah. Anyway, that's why I voted the way I did.
And that's 2 weeks. I knew we had different ideas and wanted everybody to be able to have a say in it, and why we tabled it to get to where we are. So thank you for sharing ideas.
Any other discussion? Okay. Seeing none, no motions. Item number 3 has been dealt with. The petition did not pass. Therefore, see it open for John to make it a further petition if he wants to, or proceed without requesting city water. You're obviously welcome to visit with Ty and staff to see, to work things out. That's always an option.
I mean, I'd encourage that. I think there could be some work that could be done between the city and John, yourself. See where it goes from there.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate that. Appreciate everybody working on it.
It's a hard one, John.
These are tough decisions, and I'm
Yeah,
glad I'm not in you guys' position. So, but like I said, we understand the situation. We're going to try to resolve it best we can without creating a problem for the city. So we'll have to deal with it. And I personally understand the issues. So
Appreciate the
Not a-
understanding. And
So
appreciate your
my only
willingness. to-
my only question is, if I move back in the city, if I could find a place, move back in the city, how many chickens can I now have after
We're
your
about to
last
find
meeting?
out, John.
Four. John, 4.
We're about to find out.
We're gonna make you,
I can
the-
only have 4 chickens. I'm not moving back.
you move back, you're the mayor, John, you can decide.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, city reports and city business. Ty, you're gonna take care of those items you've got on the.
Yeah, so I didn't have this listed as a action item this time because I actually missed the meeting when we talked about chickens. And so as I go to work on it, I would just really appreciate some kind of general comments from the council, so I know which direction, because I missed the meeting, but to be honest, my concern isn't necessarily the total number as it is the nuisance. There's some that allow a certain number, but not roosters, because roosters are hard to train to not be vocal. And then there's other ordinances that go into all kinds of animals and combination of animals. And that's another more complicated issue. But to be honest, it's just like the dogs. 5 to 1 really vocal, obnoxious dog is 1 dog too many. 5 that are well behaved, doesn't bother your neighbor, don't care. So I don't know what discussions you've already had, but I do think urban farms growing your own eggs is maybe, a reason similar to why people want to live in Morgan. So I'm not opposed to chickens. It's just that we have this big leap. We have 0 to a whole bunch because of lot size. But if they don't cause problems, you can't smell them, see them. Maybe it's the distance from the other neighbor's lot line that we worry about. And then if it fits, it fits. If it doesn't, because you built your entire lot and you can't create enough separation, maybe that's an approach. So anyway, just like, if you have anything to share with me, I will bring back more proposals. I just thought I would share my thoughts on it since I wasn't at the meeting. And then if you have any of your own thoughts, I can take those under advisement.
Jeffrey, thoughts?
We've heard a lot in the last year about keeping rural, bringing Morgan, having animals. And I was at last meeting 2 weeks ago that the young lady talked about not being able to have chickens, wanting to have a few chickens. I think we need to look at it, just see where it makes sense and come up with some kind of ruling to allow it.
Do you have any other parameters? You're in favor? of
Well-
any parameters you thought of?
Let's see, I don't
If you have-
know how many's too many chickens, I guess.
Well, maybe,
Say one could be too many.
yeah, and then I have seen ordinances of 6, right, as a kind of and so I don't know if that has something to do with like how many chickens it takes to produce enough eggs for a family without going into retail. like I'm, I don't know what that number is. But then also if it's in combination with other animals. So do you want to include like, well, you know what I'm saying? It's
How
like,
many chickens can you have and a rabbit
and ducks
and a duck or a
and dogs.
pheasant or whatever?
Do you have any thoughts on that? Is it okay to have?
Current ordinance doesn't look like we have a place similar to what you talked about. If you have, you've got 20,000 square feet, you have 1 duck, 3 goats, and 2 chickens.
Yeah.
Over 20,000 square feet, yeah.
But yeah, so it's a larger
On a
lot,
large-
so it's the smaller lots that just
smaller
none are
lots.
allowed. Right, so,
Any input for Ty?
Okay.
if we were going to do it, I guess my would thought would be in addition to maybe a number, are they caged? Or are they roam free range, cage free?
Okay.
Which would you have thought which way you want to propose it?
Me personally.
Yeah,
I would think-
that's what Ty's asking for,
I
our
would- I
personal
would think
thought.
you'd wanna have- I would think you'd want to have a cage.
Makes sense to you too.
I've actually got some of my neighbor's chickens down on my farm, so they're free range.
Cage free,
They're cage free. Definitely are.
better eggs.
Larger lot though,
What?
large lot though, right?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, both of us do. So, I mean, that's not the issue.
Right.
But I would say this, I mean, one of the big things that I hear almost every day is you're so lucky to live up there where you can have that rural atmosphere. And I think that's part of it that people want is that rural atmosphere. So, I mean, obviously in some of our zones in the city, it wouldn't make sense to be able to keep an animal in our new townhomes that are going in. That would absolutely not make any sense, right? But maybe somebody with the R110 lot, a smaller lot, we could get them down to, 6 chickens that are caged, a dog, and, then you start going into, well, what about a duck and a rabbit? I mean, I've raised rabbits, I've raised ducks and everything, so, I mean, it kind of, to me, starts making sense is if you have a R120, obviously that's a bigger lot. You could have a few more animals, right? Then I get into the question of, well, what about and just because I got done with it, what about those kids that want to have a couple of 4-H lambs in their backyard? I don't think that would be a super big problem if you had a bigger lot. It's not like they're going to do anything that's going to be disastrous, I don't think, because they'd have to be caged, right? So I think some of those smaller farm animals, by no means do I think they should be raising cattle in their backyard, but I think we need to make an accommodation for some of those bigger lots. So I don't know if I'm giving you some direction. That's kind of what my feeling is if you had maybe a R120 lot or something, I don't see anything wrong with putting a couple of 4-H lambs in the backyard there to be able to do that, or 6 chickens. I do think there needs to be something addressed with having them caged, having them so that you could have them in your yard. You can collect the eggs so that Eric isn't collecting them out of his hay barn.
Or maybe distance from neighboring.
Yeah, or neighboring
Sure.
something or something. But I think if you got kind of into that distance thing too, Ty, I was thinking about it. Then who's going to get out the tape measure and start measuring, I mean, that you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It could get a little bit cumbersome with that of measuring into backyards.
One more code enforcement thing I could.
Another
fail at.
code enforcement thing that,
I could-
well, it's 300 feet, I mean.
I'm
So
glad
I'm
you,
just trying to think of something simple to go, all right, you got an R110 lot, you could have 6 chickens, 3 bunnies. Bunnies don't really cause much problems, the ones I had, because we just kept them in a cage, but what? They don't bark like the neighbors, but
but all 3 of you so far have said that you're interested in allowing something in the smaller zone. Because I'm glad you clarified, because when you first started, then what I heard you saying was like, if you want to do farm animals, bring them to your house.
no,
So our ordinance is, if you want to raise a sheep, take them to Eric's lot.
I already
But
got
That's
it.
not, but you clarified, so I'm glad you did.
Yeah, we already got enough down there.
We already have an ordinance in place. I think it's 20,000 square feet. I don't remember
Yeah.
exactly how many animals we can have in 20,000.
But it's quite a few. It's
But
quite a few.
So do we need them to maybe add to it, say if you have a 10,000 square foot lot, then this is what's
That's what we're,
allowable?
a limited number of
Yeah, does that make sense?
Kind of a
tiered system.
tiered system is what I think would be more appropriate. I mean,
Okay.
David?
Ty, I don't feel strongly one way or another, as long as it's not a nuisance. A few seems to, I'd go along with the others if, and I would maybe defer to you to come up with a proposal on what works. I throw out, would something like that be best done through a public hearing? I mean, and maybe not, maybe that's not the right word, but does it make sense for the community to chime in on it.
Yeah, so, at any point in any discussion points, we can do community surveys and stuff like that outside of a public
Yeah.
meeting. I mean, that's just a tool we haven't done, but,
I think
we just
most
put a
people
little
would
bit
have
of-
an opinion one way or the other, and a survey that's a great way to put it, a
it's an
survey.
opinion poll.
Yeah,
like, how you
survey,
Feel about
yeah.
it. So, you
We may be surprised. I mean, if 9 out of 10 said no, it might help answer your question. But I think
But
we'd find
other
it's
than-
representative from what we're seeing
no,
here.
yeah, so you're the representatives of the community, right? So it's like, if you ever get in that point where it's like, we don't know how the community feels, that's a tool that,
The problem is I don't think we make policies off of opinions. But I'm afraid that if we did that, we may open Pandora's box and
no, it's only if you're looking for like perspective that you don't, the people that you talk to, and if you do say, I don't know, I'd like to see how the community feels, that is a option, but not necessarily like I'm voting for a number of chickens. That's
if we
not,
did
that's
that,
what
I'd
you
just
do.
go visit some of my neighbors and see how they feel about things. And
I mean, it's the community we represent. You'd certainly want to be in tune with it.
Yeah. That's good. I appreciate the replay if you all hashed it out already. So
Yeah.
My thoughts are you totally eliminate roosters,
roosters,
eliminate rooster period. And the others gotta be restrained on their property. Cannot leave their property. Those are the two things. As far as combination of animals, I think you put a max of 6, and then they can have whatever combination of
small animals.
That small they want, but the max is 6. I don't think you go 6 chickens and then 2 bunnies and 2 guinea pigs and 4, lambs. I think put a max number of
Indoor, outdoor,
combination-
outdoor.
Combination of animals, that's my thought.
Okay.
Go max of 6, let them convey what combination they want rather than specify numbers on each of these various species. And then they gotta be maintaining their own property. No roosters.
I like that.
sometimes you buy that straight run and you end up with a rooster stuck in there anyway, but
So then they have to get rid of it.
then they just gotta get rid of it.
Right, you
That
can-
happens.
You can take that thing and give it away. It does. You gotta get rid of it. Gary, you had a comment.
Would you like to know the way the order street sales go? Yeah. And you can just add this if you want. Essentially, animals are allowed everything except for that. They're allowed in all, except commercial zones, including they're allowed in all residential zones.
Even a multifamily one?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, okay, it's qualified. It says, animals allowed, not more than any of the following are allowed: 1 cow or horse, or 2 sheep or goats, or 25 pheasants or chickens, rabbits or pigeons, or 10 geese or ducks. Animals and fowls not specifically listed may be substituted for those listed of similar size. Combinations of animals and fowls are also allowed by conditional use permit for farm industries such as, we define farm industry. Then it says the lot size.
Okay.
It says for every 20,000 square feet of lot area, one of the above mentioned types of animals will be allowed. Furthermore, for every additional 10,000 square feet lot area, one additional type of animal will be allowed. So that's the type. So if you can have 2 goats, that's one thing. You can have 10 geese. That's another thing. So if you wanted, you could go down from there and say on a 10,000 square foot lot,
Mhm.
this many are allowed. On a
What does that say for 10,000 square foot?
But does it?
What does that
Doesn't.
say? It doesn't.
No, it's
Okay.
all or none. It's just a large lot.
All right, all right.
It was like, there are a lot of people who love chicken. And, but we did come up with a type of food. Like, for 20,000 and over, we didn't, it was pretty unrestricted. It was like this, but we did have a breakdown to 10,000 square foot, 8,000. 6,000 too small.
So you could provide that to Ty to take a look at then.
You would like.
Yeah. Sure. That might be our answer right there.
Okay, Ty, next time.
No cows on the balcony, Eric.
So,
That would be awesome, actually.
so this next item is just kind of an introduction, but just to let everybody know, we did that water line project last year. And we've had some discussions about, do we need curb, gutter and sidewalk everywhere? Well, on that same road, we have a sidewalk grant that we're gonna start in the spring. So I've asked Lance to come up with a couple of different concepts with our engineers, just to see if there's any other, our standards are kind of a one, this is what we do. We did in, what was it? The middle of Pheasant Run, there was some discussions about the low impact water or LIDs or whatever, but we had nothing designed to it, and that was a whole separate thing. So what I've asked Lance to do is kind of just look at some different options, and this is just an initial introduction to show you the design work that we've come up with, and I'll let Lance kind of walk through these options with you and then just get some initial feedback and see if we're on the right track, if you like the direction we're headed or not, so that we can put a new standard in place before we put that project out on that new road. And it wouldn't necessarily be the standard, but what I'd like to do is come up with a couple of different options that we can point to in different situations, right? So do we always need 60 feet? The full curb gutter sidewalk on both sides, or is there something else that we could do, just have a little bit of road variety? So Lance, if you I could share the packet here, and then
We'll do anything Lance wants if he brings brisket.
so I don't know if you want the controls, Lance, or you want to just talk through. I'll rotate it more, sorry.
No, I think we can just talk through this and you can run it. Do you want to go to the overhead view first and scan down to it? We got that sidewalk grant, and the thing we're running into is, what do you do to finish that street off? We had planned to do an overlay and a level course after the water line project, and we got this grant for the sidewalk. Actually, Mark and Ty and I went out to Grantsville one day and took a look at some areas out there that have some of that low impact water. And since that time, I've really been looking at and seeing things I like and things I don't like and things that don't work. And I've worked with Matt with Jones and Associates quite a bit on this. What we've kind of come up with is in order to finish the street off, there's no storm drain. It would be nearly impossible to get water out of here to do curb and gutter. It would be ridiculously expensive. It may even involve pumping, which isn't practical and something I don't think we want to get into. But what we're wondering is doing a 18-inch wide, essentially kind of a concrete mow strip. And you can see that in that other detail Ty showed along the edge of the road. In a perfect world, there'd be the money to do it on both sides before we do our level course overlay and do a sidewalk on one side. And I guess I kind of picture this as falling into place in this older part of town here, the same storm drain problems. But as time goes on, this just gives us a way to finish those areas off. The concrete mow strip protects the edge of our asphalt, so we don't continually have edges breaking off. It's going to help the road hold up better. It's just going to define the edge of that road. And then when you can go back up, Ty. What we kind of came up with is really, we don't, at least in my time here, I've never seen any water issues in these areas, but I also don't know that we've ever had a 100-year storm. But where we're also going in and doing these improvements, you can see in that enlarged section there's our 18-inch slope curb. There will be a slight swale, and the sidewalk will actually be, I think, 6 inches above that curb. So it'll be real similar. It's going to be, I think we figured 6 feet wide, that swale, or 6.5 feet wide. It'll give us some water storage in a really big rainstorm to contain the water on the street. It is so flat. We looked at doing pipes under driveways so the water run, but it is so flat, the water is not going to run anyway. So they kind of ran some models, and you can see up in the upper right there, they've got a program Jones does that they can basically draw something and then park a car in it, like a real car with real dimensions. And that's a Honda Civic, showing that your average passenger's car should clear. Really, our swale isn't going to be a whole lot worse than your average drive approach. It's a little deeper, but it's also wider. So anyways, like I say, with the issues with no storm drain, we do like the idea of, we're not going to go to that full width asphalt like we would in the new subdivision. We have the right of way width, but do we really need it in some of these older parts of town in those older streets? I don't know, but it's a good way to finish the street off. And that way, when we go in and this year, when we're done, then that street's done. It's not like, oh, well, we did half of this and half of that. And, and like I say, it gives us some water storage in a big storm, and they shot all the grade in, and we should be able to make everyone's driveways work. There's a few homes that we're actually cheating in about 6 feet from the width of our right of way, because there's a couple of homes that the house is maybe 5 or 6 feet away from the edge of the right of way. So we cheated in some with the sidewalk. We should miss everything, power poles. And anyways, that's kind of how it lays out. And this is something with the sidewalk and the level course and overlay, the whole project, that will, hopefully go to bid January 1. So where we had this kind of rough design put together, we just wanted to get your input and see if it's something you like or if it's something you don't like, and give us time to make changes or kind of carry on and get it buttoned up and nailed down and ready to go.
Lance, have you seen this in other communities?
Similar but different. A lot of areas they do. They'll do a rolled back curb, I've seen, and they'll leave a notch in the rolled back curb to the swale. Well, it just silts in and grows in, and it puddles water in the street. And it is so flat that you would have to completely, I think, tear the road out and try and build a profile to it to get fall for it to drain anywhere. So as far as this exact same thing, I haven't seen this exactly. I mean, it's similar, just, yeah, I haven't seen with like the like a mow strip, a flat mow strip, and the sidewalk raised. I mean, and Matt with Jones, they haven't seen this exact thing, but this is kind of just something we've come up with.
So for the engineer to draw plans, is he signing off on an idea that it would work, or is he just saying, oh, this is what you told me to do, here it is?
No, he's comfortable that this would work. And we've talked a lot about, I think we will add some sumps at the ends. There is a very, very slight amount of fall. There will be some sumps involved for, additional water storage in these swales. I don't know that they'll ever see water, but he's more comfortable with it if we do that.
And snow removal, does that hinder you or help you?
No, we'll just plow right to the edge of that concrete curve, and it'll be just like a wider version of a park strip we have now. We'll have snow storage between the sidewalk and the street right there in that swale where it needs to be.
But almost better because you don't have to get it over the curb, right?
Yeah, almost better because we don't have to get it over a curb.
Park strip right now is snow storage, isn't
Yeah,
it?
exactly.
Okay, thank you.
The grass swell, I guess maybe because we're in a drought. I'm a little concerned about that and keeping that watered or keeping that maintained and keeping that mowed. And, is it going to
Doesn't necessarily need to be.
No, it doesn't
grass.
necessarily
Okay,
need to be
Cause
grass.
I'm like,
No.
I'm not sure I'm not sure I'm
No.
digging the grass in there.
No, the main thing is to make sure it.
Mine says gravel.
Well, I'm looking
Well,
at that says grass
this
right
says
there.
Grass swell.
Is he drew that in, he drew in basically what people had exist in front of their house.
Well, I'm just
what
asking.
be-
So, and that it is, like, if it is an option, that the angle on it isn't impossible to mow, right? So he's showing the depth is like a 6 foot over, 6 feet wide. So it could be grass, but doesn't need to be grass. I think the main point is to make sure that this area drains. So if it's an area where the soil percolates, then that's one thing. If it's solid clay, you probably need to take out some material and backfill it, right? But the surface could be rock or.
Okay, I guess we
Whatnot.
don't necessarily need to get hung up on the surface of that swell then.
I think some people, there's a couple of homes along there that they have a single car parking spot in their driveway and that's it. I can imagine they're gonna want the same gravel that they have now and they'll be just like they are now, but there'll be a sidewalk. They'll be parking between the sidewalk and the street
Yeah.
on their little gravel swale.
Like I say, I guess maybe I'm just considering those mow strips, or park strip in the future of kind of going to a zero scape type of system so that, if you think about all that grass that we're watering through the city, that's a lot of grass and a lot of water that we're trying to maintain in a year where we have no water. I guess too, the dimensions of that could obviously be adjusted, but this is just concept, so I think I like it.
Same question. I was gonna ask the same question. I'll ask them additional questions. So would it be very much like a park strip that the homeowner would be responsible for taking care of that out in front of their home?
Yeah, I would assume so. Just like, they'll have to spray the weeds in it if it's gravel or yeah, I think that's the idea. It'd be just like a standard park strip in a new subdivision.
No,
I'm just looking at the same grass swale.
You just got me a little, I'm going,
One
I
thing,
think my first thought was, oh, that's gonna be asphalt. And then I'm like, wait, nope, that's grass. And then I'm like, wait, that ain't gonna work.
So Lance, could the architect give you a community close by that we could go visit, or you could go visit, you and Ty say and see how it's working? See if people are happy with it?
I do know, actually, one of my coworkers here at the city, I think his dad did a similar subdivision. I mean, it's clear up in Richmond. But they didn't do the concrete like park strip. And I can ask him if they've seen anything like this in our discussions.
Mhm.
He didn't have anything with this exact design, with the kind of mow strip and then this type of a swale
Mhm.
with the sidewalk at that elevation. But I can ask him if they're aware of anything that's similar.
Yeah, check with the architect.
so the original one that Lance and I looked at was actually a neighborhood that I lived in Grantsville, and has a really clean look. It has you want it on low speed roads, right? You can go bombing through a shallow swell and run over the top of the
Kids.
well, I'm just saying, like, it does, the downside is it does create a little bit of parking challenges, like people parking in the swell just because it levels off, but as people landscape and put landscape rocks, and homeowners kind of take care of that problem with the way that they landscape it. We had a variety of landscapes. Everyone took care of their own swell. There were still, some trees planted in them. Rocks, some people had different colors rocks. Some people built a little footbridge over to their sidewalk as a decoration. So it's not exactly the same, but it's not even necessarily less expensive because of that concrete, but paving up to that concrete is a really clean look, but it helps that concrete in a big way. And so the edges of this area of town, and like we just did Island Road with no finishes on the outside, we compacted gravel, but over time, that's, that's not gonna hold up. And so I have lived in a community that
Seen it work.
had that, yeah.
Yeah, good, okay.
But I don't know of any
That's
others.
the concrete you're talking about.
Yep. Yeah, so right here on the edges, you pour concrete, but it's level with the asphalt. You pave right up to it. And our swells were actually they were a lot deeper. So they weren't on the same flat ground as we have right here. But the swells were calculated for stormwater. So every area is a little different, but they were a lot deeper than this design.
Do you remember any that filled in with weeds?
Oh, yeah. Just like every park strip,
Isn't any different than?
with or without
anything else?
rocks.
Yep.
So, I mean,
Yep.
even the ones that it's like concrete next to concrete on a roll curb, if they're not maintained, it's,
Here they come.
we had the biggest, I don't know if eyesore is the right word, but there were some that were like dug out from the point of development with nothing put back in. So right here, there was a large drop off, like a 4-inch drop off. So where landscaping actually didn't happen, that was probably the worst case of what I saw. But, and mine was clay, and it would rain and it would just fill up like a bathtub. And then I have a neighbor come by and say, yeah, mine used to do that. And then I just drilled down, removed all the stuff and filled it back in. And so just a thought, this would be pretty level, pretty flat, but maybe a good way to retrofit and clean up some of these other areas of town with a pretty low impact. And thing about collecting that stormwater is then we got to put it somewhere. So
The areas that you're considering don't handle irrigation water. I mean, you see some of that going down the streets.
I was talking about like this ditch out here, open ditch.
There's no open ditch like down 100 North where this original sidewalk grant that we're gonna do the sidewalk, there's no open ditches down 100 North, no.
So years ago, we did a subdivision with rolled curb and gutter. This isn't gonna look anything like that, is it? Because I'm not too thrilled with the way that looks, actually. So this is,
Well,
this.
that one doesn't have park strip, does it? That sidewalk back a curb.
No, so
Right.
this will be entirely different, right?
Yeah,
Right.
no, we're
Yeah.
not gonna do the sidewalk right next to the curb again. That's a mess.
To
It's
your
gonna
point,
have,
it filled in and,
yeah, it's gonna have a nice 6-foot
Separation.
separation between the sidewalk. The sidewalk will be, slightly elevated higher than that curb, as you can see. No, we're not gonna, we're not gonna do that again.
Asphalt, so.
Yes. So the sidewalk accomplishes the same thing that curb and gutter does. 6 inches here on the side of the road, it's just 6 feet back. So it will catch the water, it won't move necessarily. It just gives it more of a place to.
I wonder if you ought to let the planning commission take a look at this.
Yeah, we could. Where it's a standard, we just wanted to kind of start here before we go through.
Yeah.
Updating anything.
I mean, they're part of their concerning to hear them talk about it in the meetings or the overall look and feel and
Sure.
appeal of what we're doing.
Well, and as time goes on, if we adopt something like this, this may not even be something that we would allow in a new development. This may just be something to retrofit some of these older areas. You know, you're not just gonna, I think we talked about this with that Pheasant Run subdivision, that in a new development, I think they're still required to do some storm drain things, I think we can do this in an older area where there is no storm drain. It was built 100 years ago, but I think this may not be this exact design, something that would go in a brand new development or subdivision. This is just gives us something to, finish off some of these areas, that we can do some sidewalk on, 100 west and 200 west and 300 west
And more flat areas too. So
And-
this will, contain the water until it soaks in. But if it's on a steep slope, you're just gonna create a river on the side of the road that'll end up somewhere if it's on a really steep,
Sure.
potentially.
Not for every situation.
So,
And this will fit with the grant.
so the grant's just for sidewalk. So
It's just
all
the
it is,
sidewalk.
yeah, so that grant, we're not eligible to use that grant for the curb gutter road improvements anyway. It's strictly just the sidewalk portion. So if we're gonna go add a sidewalk, that's what we're saying, then do we just add a sidewalk and not do anything to the road, or should we do some road improvements and tie it all together? Right, but then if we do curb and gutter like our standard says, then we're gonna need to do some storm drain sumps and maybe never get the water anywhere anyway, because it's all pretty flat. So we're just while we're doing the sidewalk, we're just trying to make this a really nice improvement to the
Biggest bang, gotcha.
to the road, and that whole road's gonna be resurfaced anyway because of that. It was on the schedule and we just did that water line project. So that's just what we're aiming towards, make it look real nice while we're doing it, tie it all together. And then maybe it's just a testing to see how it functions for us. And
For a long time, for as long as I've been here, I used to have some discussions with Olin Mixon about the need for curb and gutter. And I've never believed we had to have curb and gutter everywhere. I like the concept of looking at different changes. Curb and gutter just creates a place, you gotta direct the stormwater somewhere. And there's a huge expense putting stormwater somewhere. So I've been in favor of something like this for a long time. Those areas where there's not any curb and gutter, where the water goes out in the gravel area, we park your cars and lawns. To me, that's a better use of stormwater than putting down a storm drain, which we don't have. I don't know how many millions of dollars it takes to put storm drains in this whole city. I'm in favor of a concept like this. Couple things I would maybe discuss with this. If you go gravel rather than grass, go park on that, I'm afraid you're gonna lose your slopes. People pull in and out of there and park and move in and out of there and park. And they try and use their four-wheeler to move snow so they can park in there. I think you can lose your slopes. I guess part of my question looking at it, does the sidewalk need to be that much higher than this? Or so it's lower? Could, if you have extra work at the floor of the sidewalk on the people's front yards, is that a problem? More so, like I see those slopes not staying there. I'm excited about the concept and idea. Tony mentioned one down Island Road. I know everybody except me was really upset about that, didn't like it, gonna use bad words about it. Because I've done it in the middle of a big heavy rainstorm. I'm not sure it's a bad situation. Then across from Merrick down there to the other road down there. You got curving side. On the other side, there's the home side, there's no curving over there. A bad rainstorm, where's that water go, Eric?
Off.
Out into that rocky gravel area. So to me, I like the concept, I like the idea. And I get perception change. People think, oh, I gotta have a curb and gutter. So you got a perception change of people. And again, I think the wildflower thing, in my estimation, people blew up about that, the way it was done with it and so forth. But I drive down in the big rainstorm, I don't see a problem with that way it functions. To me, it functions really well. It's a,
Just don't like the way it looks.
it's a change. But anything's gonna look bad if people don't maintain it. So it's the way they properly maintain it. As far as that goes, is it your asphalt curb and gutter what we're used to seeing? Yes, it is. We got some other changes coming too. Everybody drive down the street, you like to see green park strips. They're favorable. But if we take a look at this drought scenario, are we going to encourage people to do other alternative zero-scaping?
Yes.
It's going to look different. It's not going to look the same. It's not going to look like what you're used to. But are we okay if somebody does some zero-scaping in their parks in front yard? And that's when it's going to come before planning commission, come before us. in the
Will we
future.
need to change an ordinance for that?
No, we don't, not for residential. Residential can, there's nothing against residential except you can't put asphalt in park strip.
Okay.
Residential can put anything you want currently. We'll have to take a look at industrial and
Gotcha.
commercial multifamily. And so to me, it's a mindset change if we want to consider looking at that mindset change. Curb and gutter in front of your house, yeah, look, totally don't have curb and gutter there. You're okay with the way yours look? I think it's good. With what rain, what happened to water?
Actually, when it rains, it just puddles up out in front of my house or goes
Yeah.
down. It actually goes down the street a bit.
Is that a bad or is that okay?
I would have a problem with it. Thus
I
far.
think those concepts are okay. So for years and years and years, I've had arguments against traditional curb and gutter. So I applaud some ideas and concepts of how to change it and mix that up, make that different. The challenge is how to get people to maintain it. As I drive around, and look at park strips, for example, some people have some rock and a few decorative rocks in there, some nice flower baskets. I mean, it looks pretty good. Other folks just have weeds growing in the park strip. It doesn't look very good. And so that's a challenge to get people to take pride in their own properties. And if some of these neighborhoods you live in, everybody around you's got pride in their neighborhood and take care of it. Other neighborhoods, not so much. That's the challenge to me is getting people to maintain, take care of stuff. But I wonder if those slopes, somebody parking there, it's going to destroy those slopes is my concern with the way that's laid out.
Well, and when we first started looking at this, I had in my mind that, oh, these people that have parking in front of their house, they need to keep that. And in talking with Matt about this, I had to kind of change my mindset that no, this is really, we treat this like a curb and gutter and thing. It is not an area for parking. But at the same time, then I see the one house that has a single thing, it's going to be tough for them. I don't know what you do about that.
We're people park. If, family park activity, where do they park the cars?
And that's right. And that's exactly where they do now, where when in our newer areas where you have that great big wide street, you can park cars on both sides
Right.
and we're not going to have the width for someone to park on the street on 100 North.
So that's, you mean, that's part of the dialogue.
Yeah, so-
Accommodate both
No,
sides.
and that's,
I'm
yeah,
in- I'm in
there's
favor.
a couple of homes there that I do worry about. Where are they going to park their cars? Because
I'm-
they don't have off-street parking.
I'm totally in favor of less asphalt. Totally am. Less maintenance, less cost down the road. Totally in favor of that. But we still need to look at this and then accommodate it. I applaud the idea. I think we still need to look at some more. I applaud the concept.
Yeah, as we had talked about this, I think Matt and I were more picturing, like the cobble rock, the bigger rock, like we did over on Young Street when we finished that off over by the high school and stuff in here, kind of that bigger cobble rock. And you just hope to discourage people from it's not your parking.
Kids drive through that all the time.
Yeah, it works good.
So anyway, great. I enjoy and love the concepts. We just need to sort out and look at it and see what makes sense.
Bigger rock will keep it in place more than the smaller rock. That could
Yes.
get out onto the street and onto the sidewalk, wouldn't it?
Anyway,
Okay.
any other thoughts, Jeffrey, Tony, Eric, Dave?
No.
Gary?
No, I've seen this actually work in.
Well, yeah.
They're
And they take care of, they maintain the exhaust, or the city does.
Ours are also $1 million homes, just so you know.
Seemed like it.
Yeah.
Last month.
Well, just across the street would be about 700,000, but we're getting close.
Okay. Hi.
That's
Yeah, that's what you got. Okay.
Unless
Anything else?
there's any follow-up items from council that
Anything
I'd like
else
to
we
hear
can-
from.
yeah,
There's tons of
we
stuff
can.
going on.
Anything-
I got
anything else,
one.
Okay, Eric, go ahead.
2 minutes or less. We conserving water? We doing good?
Yes.
That's all I need.
Yeah, so
We're making progress.
we're
Concerned or
get-
doing good.
we're collecting some data, trying to validate the data. We haven't noticed a continual drop in the spring flow. It's less flow, but not necessarily drop
It
since
hadn't dropped much more.
a small spike after that rainstorm, which we didn't anticipate that would react, but we still have work to do on validating the data. So our data points, just to be honest, we don't have a high level of confidence in numbers that we've received or presented, but I'll be working on that. SCADA thing going, so.
The big outflows, have you managed to group some of those, the 100,000 gallon
Oh, yeah.
flows?
Yeah, we fixed quite a few leaks. Just in 2 leaks was saved over $4 million gallons a year.
Wow, right on.
So,
Right on.
and other ones. Just so you're all aware, the rate increase went into effect July 15th, billing cycle finished August 15th. And so people that haven't heard or haven't known what's going on or didn't get the postcard or haven't been approached by an angry neighbor for watering when they're not supposed to be watering or whatever. So some of those phone calls or some of that sticker shock might be happening next month. We hope that what that inspires is an effort to look for leaks, right? So if someone feels like, hey, this is outrageous, the answer is let's make sure you don't have a leak. And we're just gonna keep plugging away. We've changed quite a few meters. So that's also where people aren't used to getting any overage because the meter hadn't been working. Has caused some concern, but people understand where, for the most part, have been really reasonable in our approach. We try and not get wore down customer service wise. Our guys are taking a lot of
Heat.
yeah, heat's a good word. But you know, that's not our intent. Our intent is really to work with people to find those areas of leaks. And if it's just high water use, it is what it is. But if you're not using it, we don't want you to have to pay. We just want the leaks fixed for everybody's benefit.
So I think we all received an email from a Dustin Finlinson. Any report on that?
Yeah, we've been working with them multiple times. Been to the home and still just kind of working through kind of the
Discovery process.
leak. Yeah, just to make sure it's a leak. There's other issues and other things going on that I'm not sure we can necessarily address, but
Some people are actively working on fixing leaks, which is positive and awesome. Others are just kind of ignoring it. So we'll see what happens with those down the road.
See when they get the bill. Huh?
mhm. And some of it's just self-awareness too. Like there's no way I'm using this much water, but you know, unless we can find a leak. It's,
Thanks, Lance.
thanks, Lance. Okay.
Jeffrey, anything else? Question, Tony?
No.
David?
I don't.
Okay. I have one that Denise wanted to be mentioned. Future meetings. Do we still want to offer them by Zoom or do we want to just go to regular open meetings, and not worry about the Zoom concept? Denise, maybe you can respond to that and then what you found out talking with your other folks in other cities.
Yeah, most of them have just went back to regular meetings. They don't advertise the Zoom, but the Zoom is available on their website. Should somebody want to join through Zoom, it would be through registration, but we wouldn't put it on the agenda anymore that gets posted. Also through Zoom, we're still able to do YouTube Live. So not that I see a lot of people that are watching it. Is that something you want to continue with? Or just go back to regular meetings and not do Zoom or YouTube Live?
I'd be fine with that.
I only worry about the Delta variant and our increasing cases. Are we
Like
a
I say,
little bit premature?
My thought
We're going
is-
the wrong way right now.
Well, my
That's what
thought
I'm
is,
saying, yeah.
Yeah.
Do we
if
need
we-
to keep the Zoom going until that comes back down?
if,
On the
if
chance that
we,
we have to go back to
Move
it.
into fall.
I'd say if we have to go back to it, then we got the option. Right?
Depends on the numbers you look at. Last 4 days, we have gone down.
A little bit.
Yeah.
I-
So have we hit a peak, going down, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a trend. though.
Our Morgan Soon average is 1.7, so we're less than 2 in Morgan. So Morgan had hit the spike like
Mhm.
others have done, as far as the numbers. Salt Lake, Davis, Utah, Weaver counties, yeah, and then others have spiked, so every place. But Morgan, we have, our 70 averages are less than 2, 1.71.
Well, I think that'll change, isn't there like a dozen kids just test positive at the high school this week?
I don't know. I don't know, they're still testing high school. Meeting I was in on Monday, said they're not testing anymore, high school.
I'd heard we lost the whole girls soccer team. One tested positive, they all got sick, they've all been tested.
Yeah, if.
Yeah,
they're sick,
that
okay,
there's-
Yeah, that's possible.
So
We're seeing it.
That number could hit us, yeah.
do we still have a maximum attendance here in the building, in the room?
Well, that's
Due
what it
to
is right now.
COVID or
That's
fire
on
marshal?
12.
COVID.
It's
Yeah.
on the agenda, but we only allow 12 in the room, which includes all of you guys.
Right.
Which we usually don't
Oh.
go over.
With,
I wouldn't mind keeping the Zoom option just for people that want to join electronically. So it would be on the website, if they went to the calendar, looked at the council meeting, and then that Zoom link would be there. It'd be a learning curve for them to find it, but what are your thoughts, Gary? What's Layton doing?
They broadcast all their main meetings.
Yeah. you tube it on Zoom at both or just Zoom? That's the thing, they show YouTube, not Zoom.
So is the 12 a state or a health mandate
No.
or our own?
It's just what we came up with when we went to having.
Those mandates all went away.
Okay, so we could have unlimited in here then.
Okay, mandates all went away. They may establish some more. But I understand it's up to the legislature. They took that authority away from the health department.
I mean, we don't normally even have 12, so just continue with what we're doing. If we have the option of going back to the Zoom, maybe we leave that in our back pocket and
Just a tool in our tool belt.
just
if
put
we
it
need
on
to
the
use it.
YouTube.
I like to have this for backup.
With,
Okay, well,
with the variant increase in potential, you want to leave it as is for a period of time,
Yeah.
see what happens.
yeah, I wouldn't feel bad about
I let it
that.
ride for,
That's kind of what I'm hearing, what I'm kind of hearing.
Okay.
Leave with status quo for a
I
while.
let it try to get through October.
Anything else? Anything else? Okay. Do we have a closed session? You still want the closed session? Okay. I'll entertain a motion. We go into closed session.
So moved.
Second,
I'll second.
by Eric, second by Tony. We go into closed session for
I gotta say that.
strategy session to discuss a purchase, exchange, or lease of real property. Any discussion on the motion? You know, please vote on the favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?